An act of defiance by Doha, going against the demands of its estranged friends by cozying up to their foe. Qatar has announced it is restoring full diplomatic relations with Iran and reinstating its ambassador. It issued this statement expressing its aspirations to strengthen bilateral relations with Iran in all fields. Qatar withdrew its ambassador in 2016 in solidarity with its ally Saudi Arabia, after its embassy in Tehran was stormed by people protesting Saudi's execution of a prominent Shia cleric. But it seems Doha's sense of solidarity has worn thin. Qatar has been in crisis since June 5th, when Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt cut diplomatic ties, accusing it of funding terrorism, being too close to Iran, and of meddling in the internal affairs of other countries. They enforced a punitive boycott, blocking their land, sea and air routes to Qatar, saying the blockade would only be lifted if Qatar met a list of 13 demands, which includes closing Al Jazeera and cutting all ties with Iran. Qatar and Iran have strong economic links, sharing a huge offshore natural gas field, and Iran has come to Qatar's aid, sending supplies and opening its airspace. After nearly 3 months of the blockade, it seemed the GCC crisis had lapsed into a stalemate. But the UAE's foreign minister has warned that Qatar's latest move has escalated its troubles, tweeting that the management of the crisis caused the burning of bridges, the squandering of sovereignty, and the deepening of the Qatari crisis, and undermined what remained of the mediator's chances. The wisdom that we hoped for was completely absent. The ultimatum of Saudi Arabia and its allies appears to have been a miscalculation, with Qatar signalling it's willing to go its own way. And now that push has come to shove, are Qatar and Iran being pushed closer together? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to debate this, I'm joined by Mahjoub Zuwairi. He's a Middle East history professor with the Gulf Studies program at Qatar University. He also has a PhD from Tehran University. And for the view from the other side, we have Hisham Al-Ghannam. He's a fellow at Saudi Arabia's King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mahjoub Zuwairi, the foreign minister of the UAE says this decision to restore ties with Iran, quote, embarrasses Qatar. Does it embarrass Qatar?
As an observer, I look at this relations, I look at this Qatari step as part of the right for any country for sovereignty to make a decision about its own foreign policy. 2 years in the context of Saudi Arab-led coalition, Qatar has decided to withdraw its embassy because there's a commitment of being part of this coalition. As the Qatari troops are asked to withdraw from this military operation, what's so-called decisive storm, it seems that Qataris saw it as there is no reason to stay, to keep their ambassador out of Tehran. Especially Tehran was positive to help or to show a good willingness to help Qatar on this sanction imposed on the blockade imposed on Qatar by its own neighbor. So basically, it is I think it is the right for the country to decide about its own foreign policy, regardless what the others believe on it.
Hisham, sovereign nation deciding on its foreign policy with a nation that's its neighbor and also a nation that it shares economic interests with, including a very large, the largest in the world, gas field. They have a right to do it, right, Hisham?
No, I didn't think so. I think what your guest from Doha just said, with all due respect, is utter nonsense. Qatar is not Cuba during the Bay of Pigs invasion, and it's not the current North Korea. Qatar is under the U.S. security umbrella, and it's a monarchy. I think that this is a tactical move than a strategic one. The goal is to send a message to the boycotting neighbors of Qatar that the Qataris are going into the Iranian orbit and aligning with Iran. Honestly, I want to ask your distinguished guest from Doha. Will the Qatari money that will be funneled to Iran, will it be used to support the Shia death squads in Iraq and Syria, Will it be used to kill the Muslims in Syria? Honestly, I think this is a tactical move. I do not believe personally that Qatar will move into this alignment.
Okay, you had a question.
This will risk the regime itself.
Certainly,
I do think that the U.S. is the main guarantor for the Qatari regime.
So let's
trying to play with this is very critical.
Certainly, and the U.S. is also a main guarantor for the Saudis and other GCC countries.
Sure, but the Saudi is a hegemon in the region. It's totally different than a city-state such as Qatar, a small and tiny nation.
Okay, but who am I to judge who's big and small and who deserves more respect than others? But you had a question for Mahjoub. Mahjoub, is Qatar's deal with Iran going to support Iran's foreign policy interest in the region? It's a fair question. Iran's involved in Syria. A lot of people are unhappy with what's happening in Syria. Mahjoub?
I speak as an academic who's expert in the region. I don't think so that Qatar, its own foreign policy is affected by Iranian foreign policy. Qatar has a major issue with the Iranian foreign policy when it comes to Syria. But there is a way to manage your relations even with your enemy. It's not really, if Qatar, Iran had a problem over Syria, that doesn't mean that they should have a crisis which basically led to confrontation. There is a way how you manage your relations. I mean, Saudis managed their relations with Iran from 1997 until 2004. At that time, the nuclear issue was on the table. The UK, France, and Germany were discussing Iran about their nuclear issue, and Saudi Arabia had strong ties with Iran. Can anyone object that, or can anyone question that? It is the right for Saudi Arabia to build its relation. When they decided to withdraw their embassy and they closed their ambassador.
Yeah, for the sake of the argument, I will accept what your guest from Doha just said, that Saudi Arabia is seeking a deal of Iran. Let's accept this. This is qualitatively different than a relationship, an individual relationship that the Qataris are seeking. When a hegemon such as Saudi tries to strike a grand deal and bring peace to the region, this is quite different than a small state such as Qatar tries to infiltrate the GCC and this Arab coalition with an Iranian influence. I think this is totally different, and we're comparing apples and oranges here. It's not fair to compare any relationship between, let's say, Saudi and the GCC as a whole, and between Qatar and Iran. I still ask the same question. Will Qatar support the death squads as they did when they pay recklessly the ransom to the Shia militias that hold the hostages?
Iranian influence because the Saudi Arabia in particular have not done enough to play its own role as a Muslim country led in the Gulf. That more of the experts now, they say,
now Saudi is trying to correct what happened.
Why
because
small states should not stay from the
next
day
to Saudi
Why
are
Saudi
playing
Arabia
with fire.
was against Arab Spring? Why Saudi Arabia was not helping the
can I interrupt, Imran? This is not a secret. Saudi Arabia is always with the status quo, regardless of the regime that exists. Saudi Arabia is always with the status quo. Unlike Qatar, which is recklessly.
Gentlemen, we're at the point where you're both talking at exactly the same time.
This is the country you are defending. I am not defending Qatar. Qatar has own people to defending. I am an observer. I am an observer looking at things differently. I look at what's happening now.
No, I don't think you're an observer. You work for a Qatar university, you receive a huge salary, Dr. Zuhairi. You're not an observer. I do not get any money from the Saudi
government. Give me a second to come in here and we can take a breath.
Done enough to stop Iranian influence. Iranian influence because of the weaknesses of Arab. Iran is like the third world nation.
Okay, Mahjoub Zuhairi, give me a second. Hisham, let me ask you. Hold on, Hisham. So we talk about symbolism, right? You say this is a symbolic move by the Qataris with the Iranians. It's a way at maybe thumbing their noses at the GCC, which has had them under blockade. Sure, you say it might not be Cuba in the 1960s, but it's a blockade nonetheless. What about the symbolism from the Saudis? On the surface of things, the Hajj easing of visas or restrictions seem to be a good thing. But then they parade a man who's the brother of an ousted emir from 1972. Essentially what they're trying to tell the Qataris is, hey, we've got our guy that we want to replace the Emir of Qatar with, and we're going to do it at any time of our desire. we're going to parade him and we're going to show you that we're going to push for a coup d'etat. What about the symbolism of that? Tell me, Hisham.
Can I answer? Can I answer? First, these are boycotting states. It's not a blockade. Let's be clear on that. Secondly, Saudi did not say anything clear about this. This is the signal that Qataris picked up. It appears that there are different heads for the Qatar regime. Saudi did not say that it would replace any regime.
He was irrelevant for 45 years. He was irrelevant for 45 years. They plucked him out of nowhere.
Was he irrelevant? Did the Qatari government say he did not, he represented or doesn't represent it? He acts as a Qatari. As a Qatari citizen. Saudi did not claim that they want to replace the current regime, the current Qatari regime. They did not say that. This is what the Qataris are claiming. It's not the Saudis. And back to your main point, this is quite different than when Qatar tries to blackmail its neighbors by a relationship with Iran. Now I think this will not work.
Okay. So let me ask Mahjoub.
Saudi, when the Saudis
you say it's blackmail.
When the Saudi boycotted Qatar, they knew what's coming.
Let me take your point.
Qatar is playing underneath the table, and
certainly. Let me take your point and expand
Qatar,
on
with
it.
this open relationship with Iran, they proved what the accusations of the boycotting states were from the beginning.
Okay. So let me ask Mahjoub
what the other states said.
Okay. So Mahjoub, right? You have the Qataris saying we were hacked. The Emir didn't say these nice things about Iran and relations with Tehran. And it might be true that the Qataris were hacked. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that the Qataris were hacked.
Yes.
But now that when it restores ties with Tehran, it seems as if the details of what was in that hack turned out to be true. That those things that were said about Tehran, the Qataris actually meant it. Do you see that perhaps people would read it that way?
No. Let's differentiate. This is differentiate. At the end of the day, no one needs to sing how much Iran is an amazing nation. This is a decision done by the Qatari authorities that we have a withdraw ambassador for 2 years because we are committing to the Saudi Arab coalition to fight Houthis and restore the legitimacy or legitimate government in Yemen. Now we are out of this coalition. We have the right to decide about our foreign policy. Now this is obvious. This is an ABC, very clear. Like say, this is the sun. I mean, I don't see it. Why there is
it's very clear when you support the Arab coalition.
However,
in the war of Yemen, then suddenly
the issue
the Arab coalition becomes a criminal coalition. Suddenly. In a day and night. This is a prime example and a clear example of the Qatari policy in the last 20 years.
Hisham, let the man finish his point.
I wish
as a part of
I wish if Qatar had the neutral position of Kuwait and Oman. No one
Hisham, let the man finish his point.
Old years. All
countries
are all pilgrims, all Muslims are going there because they're doing this activity once
Muslims are killed in Syria and Iraq, Dr. Zuhairi. I know that personally you cannot condemn this on air. I know personally that you cannot condemn this on air.
This is not you are shouting.
I wish you can condemn. I wish you can condemn the Iranian acts in Syria and Iraq.
This is not true.
I personally respect you, Dr. Zuhairi. But I wish that you can condemn the killing of Muslims in Syria and Iraq. I do not know why you
have to be respected.
Mahjoub, let me ask Hisham a question.
You can't shout.
Okay, let me ask.
He can shout a lot.
Certainly. Mahjoub,
I'm sorry to say this. He's shouting for nonsense.
I understand. And Hisham, you are filibustering. But let me ask you a question. If you could listen for 10 seconds here, right? So you mentioned Shia death squads. They are Sunni death squads. The region's a complete mess. The region is an absolute disaster at the moment. And a lot of people blame the Iranians for meddling and getting involved and so on. I'm not here to debate that. But maybe, Hisham, by the Qataris having full diplomatic ties with the Iranians, maybe they're the bridge that the rest of the GCC countries need to talk to Tehran to maybe put an end to this sectarianism and bloodshed in the region. Maybe that's the way it should be done. I mean, nothing else has worked, Hisham.
I think you're being sarcastic, Imran. I'm sure you're.
I'm not being sarcastic. What else has worked?
No one. Imran, you work in Qatar. You know for good that this is a city-state. It's a small nation that cannot influence or change the policies of a big state and a hegemon in the region, such as the Iranian regime. This doesn't happen in international relations.
So why are they being boycotted?
Qatar could be swallowed easily by the Iranians, not the opposite.
So why hasn't the Saudi blockade worked then?
I'm sorry
Hisham,
to say,
why hasn't the
Imran,
Saudi blockade
that
worked then?
This doesn't see the realities.
It's working. We wouldn't expect it to work in a short period of time. This will take time. Everybody that started the boycott know that. This could take years,
give us a second.
United Kingdom then. Look at what Germany did.
Me now.
Look at all of that.
Mahjoub, you're doing to him what he did to you.
Can I speak?
Singapore is a small state.
Mahjoub Zawahiri, hold on. Mahjoub, you're doing to him what he did to you. Hisham, 10 seconds, finish your answer, and then Mahjoub, I'll give you the final word. Hisham.
Sure. Everybody that started the boycott know, every state that was involved in this boycott knows that this could take years, not days and months. So it will work at the end of the day. The current situation is not sustainable for the Qataris. Everybody knows that, including the Qataris. If this wasn't true, Qatar will take the neutral position of Kuwait and Oman, and it wouldn't have an open relationships with Iran and risk its regime, the regime itself in Qatar. At the end of the day, I think this boycott have proven what these states, Saudi, UAE, Egypt, and Bahrain have stated from the beginning, that Qataris are playing with fire in the region, are being aligned with Iran. This is what the Qataris actually did now in the open. And I think this is the main intention of these states. It's not a surprise for them. And they were not shocked by the Qatari actions after the boycott.
Okay, so Mahjoub, I have to wrap, so I'm going to give you the final word. Come in.
Yes. I think it's obvious that the country participated in the blockade were hurted more than Qatar. Bloomberg reports and other reports confirm the fact that this blockade is being affected badly the other countries other than Qatar. I mean, Qatar.
How is it obvious? How is it obvious? Everything is obvious for
They are looking at this as a long term, and they have a plan B and C. According all of these reports, they are doing very well.
I wish Dr. Zawahiri. I sincerely wish that.
To respect, to move on. I think according to the trust, they are full confident of what they are doing. All of the measures being taken. And I think the world, most of modern world, is looking with a lot of respect to what they are doing, opening their arms to cooperate with Qatar, which I think others, they should look at this seriously.
Mahjoub Zawahiri and Hisham Al-Ghannam, gentlemen, I thank you for joining us.